Wow, I might even get quite emotional in this video. So I know the title of this video is What's It Like to Play PlayerUnknown's Battlegrounds on an Xbox Series S next gen console, and straight away I can tell you it's amazing. It really is. It feels like you're playing on a high-end gaming PC. Now the problem is I can't capture the footage for YouTube in a way that makes it look as good as it does on my television, because I can only capture at the moment with a capture card. I guess I'm going to have to buy a new capture card for my laptop. I can only capture it at either 720p 60 frames a second, which I'm doing for this video, or 1080p 30 frames a second. And I felt that the 60 frames a second business probably makes more of a difference. So you might kind of get an impression of that if you play this video at full screen on YouTube at the maximum quality, which is a shame, because the feeling I got when I first flashed up PUBG on my new Xbox Series S and I jumped into a game was, this feels and looks like when I first sat down on my son's gaming PC, or in front of my son's gaming PC, and I flashed up PlayerUnknown's Battlegrounds on that. And I can remember sitting down on that, and I do a little bit of keyboard and mouse, but not very much, and especially when I sat down then, I didn't do keyboard and mouse much at all, so I didn't really have a clue what I was doing. I sat down and PUBG fired up, and this fast frame rate. Now on his computer, I think it was zipping along at 144 frames a second on a gaming monitor, but I got the same feeling of you get like an extra sense of depth in the game, an extra sense of immersion with that 60 frames a second, with that solid 60 frames a second. I felt emotional when I was playing PUBG. I was like, this is amazing. This is how PUBG is meant to be played. This is how it's meant to look. And it took me back. It took me back to all those years ago, back in the end of 2017, when I bought an Xbox One S, purely for playing PlayerUnknown's Battlegrounds. Now, I came back into gaming with the Xbox 360 many years ago, when my son was kind enough to give me it. We'd bought him an Xbox One X for Christmas, I think, and he said, well, you might as well have my Xbox 360 and all my games. And I went, wow. Because I'd been out of gaming since early PS2 time. And so I remember firing up the Xbox and the 360, and I would install the Call of Duties and I'd play the campaigns, and eventually he convinced me to go online and play multiplayer. And then he got a PlayStation 4 as well, and Black Ops 3 I think was coming out, and I was like, I really want a next gen console. And so I played on his Xbox One and his PlayStation 4 and decided to get the PlayStation 4. And then 2017 came around and PUBG came out on PC. And I can remember, we would watch Shroud and Dr. Disrespect and watch this amazing game where, 100 players dropping into this map and fighting against each other. But all of us who only had like PlayStations or consoles were like, man, it's a real shame that we can't play that. And then it was announced that PUBG was coming to Xbox on their early access program, their game preview program, I think it's called. And my son very kindly lent me his OG Xbox One, and he played on his PlayStation. I'm not sure if he'd got his gaming PC by then. And I just played PUBG on it. That was all I played. And eventually he wanted it back, so I went down to Argos, and I spent my 180 quid on an Xbox One S, and also SSD as well, a solid state drive to run PUBG off it. And I think the solid state drive was like 90 quid, an external one, so it would run better, and it did run better. And those early days of PUBG, well, the first probably 18 months of PUBG were absolutely phenomenal on the Xbox. The game was terrible in terms of the way it ran. Every 4 games it would crash, but the fun we had, I had some of the best gaming experiences of my life playing PUBG in those early days. And then it came out on PlayStation 4, but started to play more on PlayStation 4. Kind of gave up on the Xbox. It ran a little bit better, I think, on the PlayStation 4. Plus, I preferred the PlayStation 4 controller. And then gradually other games came along, and quite a few of the decisions that they made about the direction PUBG was going in kind of annoyed me a bit. And I went from playing, I would play PUBG for at least an hour every night, to playing it a lot less, and now playing it very rarely indeed. But we've now got the next gen consoles came along, and I was like, I'm getting a PlayStation 5. Definitely getting a PlayStation 5. And the reason I would get a PlayStation 5 is I've got lots of games on PlayStation, digital purchases, and I think the onboard digital editing on the PlayStation 4 and the PlayStation 5, which is Share Factory, is brilliant. It means that you can create content very, very easily in a way that you definitely can't on an Xbox One or an Xbox One S or an Xbox One X. So heart set on a PlayStation 5. And then we've had the pandemic and shortages. You can't get your hands on a PlayStation 5. And then a couple of days ago, I got a notification that the One S was available at Amazon. And I was like, ooh. And it started ticking over my head. I was like, oh, next gen. But I thought, no. I mean, I all the important games I own, like PUBG, DayZ, and quite a few older ones, I own digitally for Microsoft, for Xbox. But I was like, no, PlayStation 5. And then I thought, no, let's watch a few review videos. I watched a lot of review videos, and they were like, no, if you've only got a 1080p TV that does 60 frames a second, the One S is probably the best console to get, because all those extra teraflops that the Xbox One X has and the PlayStation 5 has, are for running 60 frames a second 4K, 120 frames a second 4K, whereas the Series S can bootle along at 1080p at 60 frames a second on most games, no problems at all, and will flip up to 1440p 60 frames a second. I think it'll even jump up to 140 frames a second on 1080p sometimes as well. They're saying, this is maybe the one to think about. And I thought, it's an amazing price. It's 250 quid, and if you think that a PlayStation controller, a new PlayStation controller, is about £40, isn't it? So you're paying like 200 quid for this next gen console that can do amazing things. Okay, its limitation is the fact that it doesn't have a disk drive, and it has a very small hard drive. It only has a 500 gig hard drive, but I've got a gigabyte SSD I can plug into it. And I thought, let's go for it. And what can I say? It has exceeded my expectations playing PUBG. And the thing to remember as well is that the version of PUBG that you play right now, as of the end of March 2021, is not optimized for the Series S or the Series X. This is the Xbox One version of PUBG, the console version of PUBG, but just running much, much faster, and giving you a solid 60 frames a second on the console. And that can be a bit confusing sometimes, because there's kind of three types of games you can play on the Xbox One, and the Xbox Series S and the Xbox Series X. There's games that are optimized for the Series S and X. So what that would be when a new game comes out. So, for example, like Call of Duty Cold War, that is optimized for the One and the One X, which basically means there's two versions of it. There's the version that runs on the Xbox One on the PlayStation 4, and there's the version that runs on the PlayStation 5 and the Xbox One, Xbox Series X and Xbox Series S. Then you get the games which have a something that are so they're optimized for PlayStation and Xbox next gen consoles. Then you get a few games on Xbox anyway that have something called FPS boost, and there's about 8 of them. And these are games which are at the system level, the game boosts them up to 60 frames a second rather than 30 frames a second. So Sniper Elite is one of them, and Fallout 4 is another one. Things like that. And then all the other games are just backwards compatible, but they run much, much better. And that's what you're getting with PUBG. So hopefully, fingers crossed, fairly soon, if PUBG Corp pull their finger out, we'll get an optimized game, which is optimized for PlayStation 5 Xbox One S and Xbox One X, and sorry, Xbox Series X and Xbox Series S, and it will run even better than it does. But it's, again, you probably really can't see this in the video, but it just feels so good when you aim down sights and you're holding that corner, and it's just that smoothness of the game gives you this extra depth of field, this extra feeling of, yeah, I'm actually in a real place. Just makes it look so much better. And as I say, I was feeling quite emotional because it was taking me back to those days of wonderment when I first started playing PUBG. When remember when we were wandering around Erangel and you didn't know where you were lost. I remember being led around by some mates, and we must have been between the bridges on the south coast of Erangel somewhere or other. But you're just wandering around going, wow, this is a huge map. And we were overlooking the shortcomings in the frames per second and the jankiness and stuff like that, because we were just in wonder. Then over time, you lose that wonderment. We're going back in again now and watching it zip along. And I've got to say, I am a big fan of playing video games with a controller. A really big fan. I think the best way to play a video game is sitting back in a comfy chair with your feet up on a big TV with a controller in your hand. I don't think the best way to play video games is sitting in front of a computer monitor with a keyboard and mouse. I don't think it is. I think it's bad for you. I really do. I think it makes you more tense. If you want to relax, and being able to play PUBG with it running smooth as butter and looking absolutely amazing. It's a privilege, and I am so happy. And I'm so pleased that it runs so well, because you can be a little bit nervous. I was a little bit nervous thinking, I've spent all this money, because when you fire up the One S, all the dashboard, although it loads up really fast, oh well, that loaded fast, it's still the Xbox dashboard, and you're like, ooh, this is all the same. Is it going to be the same when I play it? But it isn't. Anyway, I'll leave you the rest of the gameplay now. Ending a chicken dinner. What can I say? If anything's sucking me back into playing more PUBG, this has got to be it, isn't it? But if you've got any questions or comments about the Series S, or want me to investigate anything and do any tests or anything like that, please put them in the comment section below, and I'll add them to the list of videos that I want to do, because I'm very excited about this. I think I, like many people, have probably dismissed the One S as, it's the baby console, it's the cheap one. That's the one you get if that's the only one you can afford. All the rest of us, we're going to get the full fat Xbox Series X and the PlayStation 5. When maybe for an awful lot of us, the Series S is a great option. So there we go. What does PUBG play like on the Series S? It's amazing. It's like playing it on a high-end gaming PC. Anyway, that's enough from me. If you enjoyed the video, hit like. If you want to see more of the same, press subscribe. And I will, of course, see you again soon.